Okay, so today is probably one of the harder days of the factoring. That's why I'm happy I'm here. Tomorrow we'll go back to an easier form of factoring, but this is like the main factoring. If you were to leave something in high school, I told you it was factoring, but today is the day. Okay, out of everything in this chapter, and I think in Math 3, if you were to know anything going into the next level, it's this day right here. Okay, because this is what you'd be expected to know before you even go to Math 098 or before you go to JJC. Factoring is crucial if you plan on taking any more classes in math, and that's going to happen if you're going to JJC or to any college or university. Okay, so make sure that you are paying attention and doing your best. I know it can be tough, but we're going to work through it together. So what two numbers multiply to 25?
5 and 5.
Good, 5 and 5, and add to 10. Again, you can check it. 5 plus 5 is 10. 5 times 5 is 25. What two numbers multiply to 6? But also add to 7. 1 times 6. Very good. You're off for a second. They're your voice. What two numbers multiply to 30 and add a -1?
-2 and -15.
Oh, as a 17, my brain. So again, 15, -15 plus -2 gets me -17. Good. When I multiply them, I get 30. We're good. Last one here, someone different. What multiplies the -24 and adds to -2?
-8.
And?
-3.
Not -3,
Positive.
+3.
Oh.
No.
No?
No,
Whoa, whoa,
not
whoa, 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 whoa. Relax. Try again. Did that one work? Because look, -8 plus 3 would be 5. You just hold on. I know you know it. Let's try someone else.
Right.
Let's try someone else. You two are pretty.
Never mind. 4 times 6. 4 minus
4 and a -6. Very good. Okay? So again, relax. Okay? Again, we're all in this together. We're all learning together. So let's just keep going forward and not jump at people. So 4 minus 6 is going to give me that -2. And when you multiply them, you get -24. And again, I don't teach with a key, so I had to think about it before I could actually answer. I was writing it down for myself. So, okay, we're going to use that tactic that we just did to move forward. So here we go. The first thing we're going to do when we have 3. So last time we did factor by grouping and had 4 terms. Now we're going to do 3 terms. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay? We're going to factor out a GCF if I can. It's going to make your life easier if you can factor out a GCF first. Always look to see if there's something common you can pull out. Then we're going to create that MA table. Determine the two numbers, 1 and 2, that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal the coefficient. That's what you just did for the warm-up. That's just like the real math terms for it. Rewrite the middle term and factors, and then factor by grouping if you need to. Okay, there is a trick. Remember I told you when we did the mod tables on Monday, that we can go straight to the very end. That's only going to happen if A is 1, and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's look at this. Remember when we did this on Monday? You always have to do what multiplies to A times C, which is 6. So like 1 times +6 is going to give me 6. And then what adds to this middle term?
-5. Is it -5?
Hold on one second. And adds to -5. So remember we touched base on it just a little bit on Monday, that last page. So what two numbers multiply to 6, but also, 1 and 6, let's look at them. Will they ever give me 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so what would I have to put the negative on?
-6.
The -6. Now think about that for a second. Is that going to add to get -5? Yeah. Is that going to multiply to get +6?
Yes.
No, it's not, right? Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. That's how you use that to guide you. If you noticed, 1 times -6 isn't going to give me +6. This is like the only hard one, in my opinion, because like that happens very little. But go ahead back there. What do you think? So this one didn't work. What's another pair?
Is it 3 times 2?
Yeah, 2 and 3. Now look at this. If I add both negatives here, -2 minus 3 gets me -5, which I want. But if I multiply them, I'm going to get a +6, and I am golden. So I'm happy. So I found my numbers. I'm going to circle them. Now here, when a is 1, do you see how this a value all the way in front is 1? You can go right to this trick. And it's so fast and so easy, so much faster than factor by grouping. So I'm going to use those magic numbers. I kind of call them magic numbers. And all I'm going to do is write them out. -2 and -3. That's factored form. Remember, if you were to do the claw and distribute, you're going to go back to here, and you're going to be right. That's kind of how that works. It's reverse factoring. Now, I don't think we're solving for zeros right now. We're not. Okay, cool. That's it. That's it for that one. Hold on, something just happened. Oh, no, that's it. All right, now let's do this next one. That was the answer. Taking it little piece by piece. Now take a look. This number all the way out in front, is it 1? It's 2. So that's a problem. That means we can't do the trick I just taught you. We're going to have to do factor by grouping, which is what you practiced yesterday and a while ago when there was 4 terms. But we're going to practice it. So what multiplies to 2 times 3, which is 6, and adds to what number? 5. Very good. But we kind of just talked about this. We already know our factors. We have 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Which one's going to get me 5? A +5. 2 and 3, right? Because 2 plus 3 equals 5.
So basically, the problem sort of solved itself
Problems are...
in a way.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Uh,
Oh, because the 2 and the 3?
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen. That's just ironic that happened. It's a coincidence.
What they call it.
So whenever you don't have an a value of 1, you have to go back to what you learned yesterday. I'm going to show you how to do this, and then you've learned it before, but it's good to review it. You have to break down that middle term into the 2 numbers you circled. So I circled a 2. We're going to add an x to it. And I circled a 3. Now, here's why we can do that so that you're not like, well, why are we doing this? I don't understand. When you add these together, don't you get 5? Okay, that's why you can do that. You can break it down because it's valid. It's true. So I'm going to bring everything else down. Bring down the 2x squared and bring down the 3. Doesn't this now look like something you did yesterday? There's 4 of them. What's the first step I do when I have 4 terms? Parentheses, very good. I'm going to parentheses that one and that one. That's what yesterday was all about. That's why I wanted you to practice it yesterday. You were going to do that regardless if I was here or not. I just had a training to go to. Now remember how we did this one. You ask yourself, what's the GCF of this very first parentheses set here?
2, 1.
You're right the first time. It's 2. So I'm going to kind of like write off to the side for your notes so you know where this is coming from. It's 2. But what else is common between them? The x. Very good. So I'm going to write that all the way outside like I normally do. I'm covering this up so you don't get confused. Go in order. What's 2 divided by 2?
1x.
Good. And then x squared divided by x is just x. So I'm going to write x.
Oh.
You can put 1x. It's the same thing. 2x divided by 2x is?
1.
Ooh, if you're multiplying.
1 + 1.
No, don't be sorry. It's just 1. Right? Because look, you don't have to draw this in, but they cancel. And when something cancels, it becomes 1. Because 2 divided by 2 is 1. 100 divided by 100. 1,000,000 divided by 1,000,000. It's all 1.
I got a question
Yes.
for outside number like 2x. Okay. Is it always going to be like x, or like, does it matter any variable?
Whatever the GCF
We
is.
don't put like a square or 3 or...
It could be squared depending on what your problem is. Like if I put, don't write this down, but if I had like x cubed plus x squared, your GCF now is x squared. You can pull out the x squared.
Yeah, because those things get between...
Yeah, so you're always looking to see what the lowest power is. So which is 1 right here. But in this situation, it's 2, right? So that's what you would pull out. It could be x, it could be y, it could be z, it could be a. Doesn't really matter. So then we look at this one. Do you see how this one doesn't have an x? So we can't pull any x's out. But what number can I pull out? 3. So my GCF here is 3. I'm going to pull it out. I always put if it's a positive or negative because that's going to help you later. I'm pulling out a positive 3, not a negative. And that's going to help you when you're rewriting them. Then what do you get left in the parentheses?
1.
X plus 1, right? Because 3 divided by 3, that cancels. Left with x. 3 divided by 3. And remember, this is where you're like, yes, I did it right. Okay, you should get excited when you get the same thing inside the parentheses, like that. Does anyone think they can write this out from all that review you did yesterday?
And 2 parentheses 2x plus 3 parentheses 1 x plus 1.
Yep.
Does it matter what order it is?
It doesn't.
X.
Mm-mm. Yeah, you can put x plus 1 first. That's fine.
So either way it's right,
That's right. Because 3 times 2 is 6, right?
right?
Is 2 times 3 6? Remember how you
Would
can just switch it?
Would it cause complications when it comes to doing it the reverse way?
It does not. Because it's called the commutative property or the associative, I don't remember from way back when. But that just means like 2 times 3 is 6, but also 3 times 2 is 6. It's the same thing. Because remember, when you're in parentheses, that means you're multiplying. So technically, 2x plus 3 times x plus 1 is what you're looking at right now. And you can always check your answers if you're someone that wants to do that. I'm just going to show this to you, but you can do the claw. If you do the claw that I talked to you about before, you should get 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. That's kind of, you're doing the reverse of what distributing is.
So it's the same. So it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same sort of equation, regardless of what order it is in.
Yes, so if you were to switch them, you'd still get the same answer. Okay, let's move to the back page, please. So now we're just going to practice it. You haven't really learned, that's all the new stuff that you learned. The only thing that's new is that first part, number 1. The rest has been the same. Okay, so let's take a look at it. I look and say, do I have a GCF? No, there's nothing that goes into all of them. So I have to do what multiplies to add, MA. So I have 3 times negative 4, which gets me what? Negative 12. And adds to what number?
4A.
Not A, but just 4. Yeah, you always want to just use numbers here. So I'm going to list them out just for those that really need that. 1 and 12 will never get me 4. That goes away. 2 and 6, is that somehow going to get me 4?
Yeah.
It could. So let's see if we can do it. I have 2 and 6. Which one has to be negative?
2.
Okay, the 2. That gets me 4. So I'm happy. I found my numbers. Because A is not 1, we have to do what we just did on the last problem called factor by grouping. So I have to first break down my middle term. I'm going to kind of put some steps in here in case you get lost when you're doing your homework. Okay, this was step 1. This was step 2. Now I'm on step 3. Just in case you need to follow something when you're looking at it. So I'm going to use those magic numbers. It was negative 2. I'm going to use A because that's what variable we're in right now. Plus 4, plus 6A. And bring everything else down that we didn't use. I didn't use the negative 4, and I didn't use the A squared. You can always check to make sure you did it right. Negative 2 plus 6 should get you that middle term. Okay? What's this first step in factoring? Parentheses, very good. I want you to take a minute and see how you're doing with this. I need to know how you're doing because factoring is very tough. From this point, you should know how to do it because I taught you that a while ago and you practiced yesterday. Okay, so from this point, you should be able to do it. It was just this getting here is the hardest part. So that's when you would find your GCF. Look at the previous page if you need it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. You can work with someone, you can work alone. You can ask for help from one of us. We both are really good at math, so we'd be more than happy to help you.
Can you divide the same number
Julian, what's that paragraph? Tomorrow night.
I struggled so much yesterday.
Alright.
Yep, there you go. And then we'll come out of it.
I know, I just that little thing. Oh.
Oh, those 620.
Doing it. Looking good.
You got at least I didn't know.
My doctor's asking me that's 23. Let's look at all the eyes today. Yeah.
We need.
Why you were supposed to?
Okay, keep going. What can I blog first?
The A's. Julian.
I'll give you another minute.
Wait a minute. Where's all your work? What is all this?
It's done. You're done.
Isn't it 6A? 6A squared? It's 6A squared, right?
Whoa.
Yep.
What?
As long as you're good to go down with negative. Yeah, that's it.
You don't really
Shouldn't it be 6A squared? 3 2 6.
If you were multiplying, so kind of like that's kind of the hard part about this is that you have to stop thinking you multiply. Your factor. So if you're asking yourself what's common between the two,
Oh.
and it's A, right? Like you said. So we're gonna write A parentheses. Now divide each one of them by A. So it's 3A squared.
Right.
No, 3.
You're right. There's one A, right? So 3. Now what is negative 2A?
So, 2A.
Good.
Just negative 2 or negative 8?
Well, you said it's A and then
Oh.
now come here. What's common between 6 and 4?
Are you ready?
5 and 1.
So you already are past that. So, but I know what you're talking about though. What number evenly goes into both of these numbers?
2.
Divide each one by 6 the other 2.
3.
Come down, right? Negative 4 divided by 2. Do you see how you got the same thing? This time. That's now you just have one last step. How you pencil. This guy now is common.
Oh, what?
Factor him out. So write that guy left. 3A minus 2.
I did too.
Then whatever's left.
Martin?
Of course.
You don't play.
So, 8 plus 2.
That's it. All right. Good job. A lot of you did really, really well with this, and that makes me really happy. If you need guidance, that's what we're here for. We're very fortunate today to have Miss Williams in here, which is amazing at math. And that's that you should be taking advantage of that, especially today, because it's an important day. You divide each one by A. Here the GCF was 2. So you should have gotten A 3 minus, oop, I messed that up.
We can't do it.
What? That. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So I'm going to then have 3A minus 2. And again, I'm pulling out that factor of 2, and I'm going to have 3a minus 2. If you don't have the same thing inside the parentheses, you should mentally know you made an error somewhere, because that will happen.
So you don't change the sign. So if it's plus or negative, minus, you don't change it to the opposite. You just bring it down.
You don't change it, yeah. So this was negative originally, so I brought down the negative.
Because that's the positive now, because it will give me a positive number. So I just.
This?
Well, yeah, basically, yeah. No.
Did you do negative 2 divided by 1? Negative 2 divided by 1? A negative and a positive make a
Negative.
negative. That's why it's negative. The only time we pull out a negative is in the situation right now. If I were to go like this, and I had a negative right here, that's when you'd want to pull out a negative, if it was here. Because that means we have to kind of manipulate the problem a little bit. Okay, so I'm left with a plus 2 and 3a minus 2. Again, you could have them flopped. You can have this one here and this one here. That's okay. It just depends on how you want to write it. Okay? Now, you can use this method every time. If you really get stuck with what we did for the first problem, like you can't remember that trick, you can still do what we just did. Factor by grouping is amazing. That was not around when I was in high school. When I was in high school, it was guess and check. Figure it out. It wasn't this cool trick that we now know. When I came to lab, I was like, what is this factor by grouping thing you talk about? Had no idea. Okay? They now, ever since I was in high school, which was my 10-year reunion just happened, okay? Not that long ago, but this didn't exist, this factor by grouping. It was literally just like we were here at this point, and we'd say, okay, guess and check, go. You had to keep doing things to keep figuring it out. Okay, so this is a great method, and it works every time. So if you struggle with remembering the trick, just do this every time if you just want to memorize one thing on how to do it. Number 4, again, 2 ways you can do this. Factor by grouping, or if you notice that every single one of them, what number is common do you think I can pull out?
4 times 2. I mean, what?
2. So, again, listen, there's two ways you can do it. You could do factor by grouping because you're good at it and you don't want to change anything. Or you can realize that there's a 2 that can go into every single one. So my GCF is 2. And the reason why I show you this way is because some people would rather just do that and have that easy trick that I taught you on number 1. So I'm left with 2 on the outside. That will cancel, I get x squared. This will cancel, I get negative x. What's 12? Negative 12 divided by 2. Yeah. Now look, a is 1. Now you don't have to do all that factor by grouping anymore. That's why it just depends on who you are as a person. If you're someone that's like, I only want to know one way and grouping, then you have to do grouping. If you're like, I like tricks, this is what you need to do. It just depends on you personally how you would do this problem. Okay? Because now I can ask myself what multiplies to negative 6 and adds to negative 1. What 2 numbers multiply to negative 6 but also add to negative 1? Well, let's list them out. 1 and 6 won't get me 1. But would it get me 1 when I add them? No, you're fine. What about 2 and 3? Could I get 1 somehow? When I have 3 and... Yeah, which one would have to be negative? If I'm looking for a negative 1, what needs to be higher?
Negative 3.
Yeah, there we go. So those are my now magic numbers. No, don't be sorry. This math class, I want you to make mistakes because you're trying. It bothers me when you don't try. Okay, so here we go. Again, you could do factor by grouping, but now you're at that point where a is 1. You can go right to the very end, and this is the funnest part. X plus 2, because that's what my magic number said. And then x minus 3. Just don't forget about the 2 in front. So, 2 ways. Factor by grouping always, or be able to realize when to use the trick. It's okay. Then you found it? That's okay.
So, whenever there's 2, 2, it will always be 2, right?
Yeah, whenever all of them are even. If you want to think of it that way. If all of them are even, you can factor out 2. So 2 is even, 2 is even, and 12 is even. So I could factor out. Again, if you hate that idea, just do grouping. If you're good at grouping, just do grouping. Because that will always get you the right answer. Always. Okay? Like you could have done it this way and still got the same answer as me. Maybe a little different. You might have a 2 distributed in there somewhere, but that's okay. Okay. Do you have questions on anything?
Nope.
All right, then I'm going to stop there because the rest are just extra practice. And I want you to now have time. You have so much time, like 15 minutes to work on this. And you can ask me questions. I will literally sit right next to you if you need that. And what's really good about this homework is that I told you if you can factor out a GCF or not first. So the first page, you can't factor out a GCF at all. On the back, it literally, the directions say, factor GCF out first, because then it'll help you out with the problem we just did. Okay? You can work together, work alone, whatever works best for you, but you are working.
So this first problem was without a GCF and the second one was with a GCF.
Well,
Right?
yes. So, did everyone get one? Dana, did you get one? Dana, get one? Dana, okay. So,
So like this was without a GCF
Yes.
and this was.
yes. And like you see how A is 1. That one is like very small. Whenever A is 1, you see all these and then look back. Everyone get a homework? Feel free to work with someone, work alone.